Welcome back to the Shaw Consulting Podcast. Today we're delving back into a crucial topic for housing associations, Awaab's Law. In the previous podcast, we discussed the immediate requirements for damp and mould compliance by October this year. But as we know, Awaab's Law extends beyond that, encompassing all hazard types. I'm Stuart, and to guide us through these next steps, I'm delighted to welcome back Shaw Consulting MD, Chris Shaw. Chris, it's great to have you with us again.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, good to be here too.
So Chris, let's jump straight in. We covered the initial damp and mould requirements. What's the next big milestone for housing associations under Awaab's Law?
That's a great question, Stuart. While damp and mould focus is certainly most immediate and well publicised, Awaab's Law is fundamentally about ensuring all hazard types are addressed promptly and effectively. So the next major push, once the initial damp and mould systems are embedded, will be around extending those robust reporting, investigation and rectification processes to all housing health and safety rating systems hazards. So this isn't just about damp and mould anymore. It's about that holistic approach to resident safety and well-being.
So really, it's about applying the same rigorous standards we've now put in place for damp and mould right the way across the board. So can you elaborate on what that actually means in practical terms for housing associations?
Yeah, absolutely. So in practical terms, it means several things. Firstly, it's about developing a comprehensive understanding of all potential hazards within their housing stock. So this isn't just reacting to complaints, but it's proactively identifying and assessing those risks. Secondly, it's about establishing clear and timely response times for all hazard categories. So just as there are deadlines for damp and mould, we can expect similar expectations to emerge for things like electrical safety, fire risks, structural issues, and so on.
So going beyond the existing housing, health and safety requirements framework and embedding Awaab's Law principles into these wider hazard categories then?
Yeah, exactly. So, think of it as a significant uplift in the existing framework, driven by Awaab's Law. It's about ensuring not only that the hazards are identified, but there are transparent and enforceable timelines for their remediation, and that residents are kept informed every step of the way. It's also about the data. So housing associations will need to ensure they've got robust systems to record, track, and report on all hazard types and demonstrate their compliance with these new standards.
So Chris, I guess this is where your expertise comes into Awaab's Law. So data seems to be the recurring theme here. So how important will this data collection and analysis be for demonstrating compliance with these broader hazard requirements?
It's absolutely critical, Stuart. The regulator will want to see evidence and not just assurances. Housing associations need to be able to demonstrate, for instance, when a hazard was reported, that initial notification, when it was acknowledged, so the first contact with the resident, when an initial assessment was carried out, so, the first visit to the customer, what was the outcome of that assessment, what hazard was there and what was the severity of it, what remedial works were agreed on, and what's the plan of action, when are those works going to get completed, what was the final resolution for that completed piece of work. And then crucially, was the resident satisfied? Do we have a happy resident with how it was handled? So this comprehensive data trail across all hazard types will be the bedrock for demonstrating that full compliance.
Chris, that's a lot of data we're talking about there. But what about the human element? How important will resident engagement and communication be in the broader compliance effort?
It's immensely important. Awaab's Law is at its heart about putting residents first. So that means empathetic and regular communication throughout the entire process. Residents need to understand what's happening, when it's happening, and why. So this means explaining the hazard in plain language, providing realistic timescales for resolution, offering alternative accommodation, when it's necessary, And most importantly, actively listening to their concerns and feedback. So it's about rebuilding trust and showing transparency in every communication that you're having with them. It is key that.
So it does sound like a significant cultural shift for some housing associations. What kind of internal changes might be necessary to meet these requirements?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Stuart. It is a cultural shift. Internally, housing associations need to foster a safety first culture that permeates across every department. So this means, enhanced training for all staff. So frontline staff, housing officers, for instance, to their maintenance teams, everyone needs to understand their role in identifying and addressing hazards. The IT systems need to be integrated. That means breaking down these departmental silos so that information about hazards flows seamlessly across these systems. There needs to be dedicated resources. So, we need to ensure there are sufficient staff and budget allocated to proactively managing the hazards. It's moving away from being a reactive repair service to a proactive, predictive repairs service. And above all, we need to ensure that there's some key leadership buy-in. Senior leadership must champion this shift and actively monitor performance. It's not just about compliance, it's about becoming genuinely resident centric in how they manage their homes.
So, Chris, it's a big ask, isn't it? And a big task. So, looking ahead, what advice would you give housing associations right now to ensure they're on the right track for these broader Awaab law requirements beyond the damp and mould?
My advice would be don't see damp and mould as a separate project. View it as the first phase of a wider integrated approach to hazard management. Build systems now that can be easily scaled. Start auditing your existing hazard management processes. Where are the gaps? Are your response times consistent across all hazard types? Invest in data and technology systems. Ensure you've got the right tools to capture, track, and report on all the necessary data points. Prioritize resident voice. Establish clear channels for feedback and complaints and demonstrate how that feedback is acted upon. And review your training programs. Ensure all staff are equipped to identify hazards and understand their responsibilities under Awaab's law. Ultimately, it's about proactively building a robust, transparent, and resident focused system for managing all hazard types. Awaab's law isn't just about a tick box exercise, it's an opportunity to genuinely improve housing conditions for everyone.
Well, thanks, Chris. That was incredibly comprehensive, and you managed to shed light on these crucial next steps. So it's clear that Awaab's law is a continuous journey, and housing associations need to be looking beyond the immediate deadlines to ensure that long-term compliance, and most importantly, resident safety.
My pleasure, Stuart. Yeah, it's a vital conversation that, we need to be having.
And that brings us to the end of another episode. Thank you to Chris for his expert advice, and thank you to all our listeners for joining us. We'll be back soon with more on the ever-evolving landscape of social housing. Thank you.